The statistics are staggering. They paint a grim picture of a crisis that is often hidden in plain sight, affecting millions of lives across the continent. Millions across Africa are trapped within the web of the sex industry. This industry thrives in the shadows, preying on the most vulnerable members of society. This isn't just about numbers, these are human lives. Each statistic represents a person with dreams, hopes, and a story that deserves to be heard. These are mothers, daughters, and sisters robbed of their dignity and freedom. They are forced into a life of exploitation, often with no way out. We need to look beyond the headlines and understand the human cost of this crisis. It's not just a distant issue. It's a reality that affects communities and families. It's time to shed light on the dark corners of exploitation and amplify the voices that have been silenced for too long. These stories need to be told, and these voices need to be heard. The sex industry in Africa is a complex issue with deep roots in poverty, inequality, and conflict. These factors create a fertile ground for exploitation to flourish. Many factors contribute to its existence, and understanding them is crucial to finding solutions. Poverty forces individuals into desperate situations, while inequality and conflict exacerbate their vulnerability. We need to ask tough questions about the forces that drive vulnerable individuals into this trade. What societal pressures and economic hardships push them into such dire circumstances? We also need to confront the demand side of this equation. Who are the people fueling this industry, and what can be done to curb their demand? Where does this demand come from, and how can we address it effectively? It's a question that requires a multifaceted approach involving education, law enforcement, and community engagement. This is not a problem unique to Africa, but a global challenge that demands our attention. Human trafficking and exploitation are issues that cross borders and affect every corner of the world. We must acknowledge the interconnectedness of these issues, recognizing that poverty, conflict, and exploitation are often intertwined. Addressing one aspect without considering the others will not lead to lasting change. By understanding these connections, we can begin to dismantle the systems that allow the sex industry to thrive. It's a complex web, but with concerted effort, it can be unraveled. It's time for honesty, for empathy, and for action. We need to come together as a global community to address these issues head-on. We need to move beyond judgment and towards understanding. Only by putting ourselves in the shoes of those affected can we begin to make a real difference. This journey starts with listening to the stories of those who have been affected by this industry. Their experiences provide invaluable insights into the realities of exploitation. By amplifying their voices, we can raise awareness and inspire change. It's a collective effort that requires the participation of individuals, communities, and nations. Together, we can create a future where exploitation is a thing of the past, and every individual can live with dignity and freedom. Poverty is a harsh reality for millions across Africa. It is a daily struggle that affects every aspect of life, from the food they eat to the roofs over their heads. The lack of basic necessities is a constant reminder of their dire situation. It forces individuals to make impossible choices, decisions that no one should ever have to face. The scarcity of resources means that every day is a battle for survival, and the stakes are incredibly high. Pushing them to extreme lengths to survive, people often find themselves doing things they never imagined. The line between right and wrong blurs when the primary goal is to stay alive and provide for one's family. For many, the sex industry becomes a last resort, a desperate attempt to escape the clutches of poverty. It is a world fraught with danger and exploitation, yet it offers a glimmer of hope for those who see no other way out. They are lured by the promise of quick money, often unaware of the dangers that lie ahead. The reality is far from the dream they were sold, and the consequences can be devastating. Lack of education and opportunity further exacerbates the problem. Without the skills and knowledge to pursue other avenues, many feel trapped in a cycle of poverty and exploitation. Without access to education and job training, many see the sex industry as the only viable option. The absence of alternative opportunities leaves them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. They are trapped in a cycle of exploitation, unable to break free and build a better future for themselves and their families. The weight of their circumstances is a heavy burden, one that is difficult to lift without external support. It's easy to judge from afar, but imagine yourself in their shoes. Consider the desperation that drives someone to such lengths, the hopelessness that makes the unthinkable seem like the only option. Imagine the desperation of not being able to feed your children or provide them with basic necessities. The pain of watching your loved ones suffer, knowing that you are powerless to change their situation. The sex industry preys on this vulnerability, exploiting the desperation of those who have nowhere else to turn. It is a predatory system that takes advantage of the most vulnerable, offering false promises and delivering only pain and suffering. We need to address the root causes of poverty, investing in education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. By providing the tools and resources necessary for self-sufficiency, we can help break the cycle of poverty and exploitation. By empowering individuals and communities, we can create a world where selling one's body is not the only option for survival. A world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, to build a better future for themselves and their families. It is a collective responsibility, one that requires compassion, understanding, and action. Human trafficking is a horrific crime that robs individuals of their freedom and dignity. It is a modern-day form of slavery that affects people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. The victims are often lured with false promises of employment, education, or a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of exploitation and abuse. It's a global issue that affects millions, transcending borders and cultures. No country is immune to this crime, and it requires a concerted effort from the international community to combat it effectively. The scale of human trafficking is staggering, with estimates suggesting that there are over 40 million victims worldwide, with Africa being a major source, transit, and destination country. The continent faces unique challenges due to its vast size, diverse population, and varying levels of economic development. Traffickers exploit these vulnerabilities, targeting individuals in impoverished and conflict-ridden regions. Traffickers prey on the vulnerable, using deceit and coercion to lure them into a life of exploitation. They often pose as legitimate employers, recruiters, or even romantic partners to gain the trust of their victims. Once ensnared, these individuals are subjected to brutal conditions and forced to work in industries such as agriculture, construction, domestic work, and the sex trade. They are often promised a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a nightmare. The reality of their situation quickly becomes apparent as they are stripped of their identification documents, isolated from their support networks, and subjected to constant surveillance and threats of violence. Victims of trafficking are subjected to unimaginable physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. They endure long hours of grueling labor, often without adequate food, rest, or medical care. The psychological toll is equally devastating, as they are constantly reminded of their powerlessness and the dangers of attempting to escape. They are treated as commodities, their bodies bought and sold without regard for their humanity. This dehumanization is a core aspect of trafficking, reducing individuals to mere objects of profit for their exploiters. The financial gains for traffickers are immense, making it one of the most lucrative criminal enterprises in the world. The scars of these experiences run deep, leaving lasting trauma that can take years to heal. Many survivors struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety long after they have escaped their captors. The road to recovery is often fraught with challenges, requiring comprehensive support services and a compassionate approach. The fight against human trafficking requires a multi-pronged approach. It involves collaboration between governments, non-governmental organizations, law enforcement agencies, and communities. Each stakeholder plays a crucial role in identifying, rescuing, and supporting victims, as well as in bringing traffickers to justice. We need stronger law enforcement, increased border security, and better coordination between countries to dismantle trafficking networks. Training and resources for law enforcement officers are essential to ensure they can effectively identify and respond to trafficking cases. And effective prosecution of traffickers. Holding perpetrators accountable is critical to deterring future crimes and delivering justice for victims. Legal frameworks must be robust and consistently enforced to ensure that traffickers face severe consequences for their actions. But we also need to focus on prevention, addressing the root causes of trafficking such as poverty, lack of education, and social inequality. Community-based initiatives can play a significant role in raising awareness and building resilience against exploitation. Raising awareness about the dangers of trafficking and educating people on how to protect themselves and others. Public awareness campaigns, school programs, and community workshops are vital tools in this effort, and empowering communities to resist exploitation. By fostering a sense of solidarity and vigilance, communities can become the first line of defense against traffickers. Local leaders, educators, and activists all have a part to play in this collective effort. This is not just a law enforcement issue, it's a societal issue that requires a holistic response. Everyone has a role to play, from policymakers to ordinary citizens. By working together, we can create a safer and more just world for all. It's a human rights issue. Every individual deserves to live free from fear and exploitation. Human trafficking is a gross violation of human rights, and combating it is a moral imperative. We must work together to create a world where every individual is free from exploitation and abuse. Through collective action, compassion, and unwavering commitment, we can make a difference and bring an end to this heinous crime.